Everyone, welcome back to another Protopie tutorial. Today I'll be showing you how to make an AI dynamic text box all in Protopie. Let's get to it. So I have Protopie open. So the first thing you want to do is to head over here and create the frame. For this, I'll be going to custom and be using a 1x1 frame. So I'm just going to select these and hit 1080 by 1080. But the density here doesn't really matter, so you can leave it as 3. And then for the system status bar type, I'm going to choose none. But if in case you're designing for an iOS or an Android device, you want to toggle to your preferred device. So in this case, I'm just going to hit none and we hit OK when you're done. So now we have our frame here. Next thing is we want to head to background and change the color to black. This is just based on my own design. So I'm going to head over to Figma. Usually I like to export my Figma design to Protopie, but for this text box, we won't be doing that. I'll be building everything from scratch. The only thing here we're going to be doing is using this Figma design as references, and also would be exporting some of the icons and buttons you see here. If I check these, you're going to see that we have like two text boxes. So the first one is basically the collapse state, and the other one is the expanded state. So when I hover my mouse over this one, it's going to expand slightly in width. So if I inspect these, you're going to notice the width here is set to 350, but this one is 424. So just in case your values don't match mine is hard coded, based on my own design. So yours will be different. So feel free to tweak it based on your own designs. So I'm just going to head back to Protopie. I will copy this heading text here. We're going to go back to Protopie, head over to the text, select these, and I'm just going to paste in the text. Hit these, we'll change the color to white and also match the font we're using in Figma. Believe is this one. I would increase the size slightly to this and center this and just move it slightly to the top. Now we have our heading text in. So now we can start creating our actual text box. So we want to head over to container, hit container, and I'm just going to drag this here. Remember the size here for this should match, the collapse state you have in Figma. In my case, it is 350 by 64. I'm just going to click that and center this and just make sure that I'm clipping this. And for the origin here, we want it to be bottom center, which is 50, 100. The opacity would be at 100. And the radius here, we can have this to be at 48. Then for the fill, I'm just going to match what I have in Figma. Click these and just copy this hex code we have here. I'm just going to hit Ctrl C or Command C if you're on a Mac. Head back to Protopie and I will just paste that in here. And just make sure that this is set to 100 because by default it's usually set to 0. So just make sure that yours is set to 100. I'm going to tick the border here because I notice in Figma I do have a border as well, which is called stroke. So you want to copy that one too as well. Head back to Protopie and hit paste. So we're going to paste that in. So now we have our main text box frame, and the way we have it designed, everything matches it here in Protopie. I'm just going to call this one text box. Cool. And just make sure this is centered. So the next thing we're going to do is export the buttons that we have in Figma. We want to export that into Protopie. So head back to Figma and just click on the attach button first. Right click, go to just make sure I'm going to plugins and go to Protopie. If in case you don't have the Protopie plugin here, you want to head over to this button here and then you search for Protopie and that would come up. but I'm just going to untick that because I have the plugin. So go over there, go to plugin, the Protopie, and you're going to see like this pop-up menu. And basically it's just showing, the layer you want to export in. So in my case is the attach button. I'm just going to hit export. So that gets into Protopie. Usually, I don't know why when you export your design from Figma to Protopie, usually stick to the top left. So we want to make sure that we're adding that into the text box frame, and go over here, position left align, and make sure this is centered. And for the X axis here, it's 12 because this matches what I have in Figma. I'm going to also just come to the constraint here. We want to make sure this is left, and also this is bottom. So left, bottom. Opacity, we can leave it at 100. I'm going to go back to this and do the same thing for the send button. Now we want to export the send button. So just hit export, that gets in. So same thing there. You want to make sure you're dragging it into the text box and align this to the center, and also this should be to the right. And the next thing I'm going to do is just make sure like this matches what I have. So you can hold like Alt down or Alt and Control. If Alt doesn't work for you, you can hold down Alt and Control to get these red guidelines you see here. So that would just tell you the exact like positioning you had in Figma. So in my case, it should be 12 and not 11. So I'm just going to move this slightly, and if I check, that's correct. So this is good. Next thing we're going to do is to make sure that the constraints are right. So here we'll be making this to be right, and this should be at the bottom. And one more thing here for the opacity, we want to have this to be 50 because by default we don't want the button to be active. Only when you focus in the input field or the text box that gets active. So by default we will leave it at 50. So that's good. Now we can go ahead and create our first input field. So we head over to text and click the input, and I'm just going to drag it here. The width here doesn't matter. Just make sure you're dragging this up until the send button. So somewhere around here, I'm just going to do maybe 262, something like this here. And also just make sure this is centered, and make sure you have the input field inside the text box frame. And for these, I'm just going to, I think this position works. We can always tweak it if it doesn't look nice. So here for the origin, we want to make sure this is going to be left center, which is 050. For the constraint, left, and this should be bottom. And one more thing I'm going to do here is to tweak, the styling that we have for the input field. So I'm going to go to font and hit this because this is what we had in Figma. Also, I'm going to leave the sizing to be at the 16 because this works. For the colors, I'm going to set it to be white. And if I go to the placeholder, I think I'm going to leave it as this. And for the text, I'm just going to change this to match what I have in Figma. So ask me anything. I have 3 dots there for the padding. I'll get rid of the left one. I think I'll just leave the right one for now. What else? We need to get rid of the fill. So we don't want that ugly white background. So this is how we have it in Figma. I'm just going to move this slightly, maybe somewhere around 56 works. And if I preview this, oops, I need to move my thing in here. Let me do this one more time. If I preview this, you can see how this looks. It looks exactly like the designs we have in Figma. Cool. So that part is done. The next thing I'm going to do is to add in the second input field. So for this one, basically the second one is going to be for the multi-line. So basically when the text box grows in height. So I'm going to go over here, the same thing, go to input, and I'm just going to drag this in here. Make sure again that the input 2 is inside the text box frame. Remember, the size for this one should match the the expanded state we have in Figma. So in my case, I have it to be 424. And for the height, instead of it being 64, I'm going to be adding plus 44 pixel to this, just because I want this. Remember, this is a multi-line and not a single line input field. So we want this to be slightly taller in height. So you want to make sure, you're adding something between, 44 to 48. I wouldn't recommend anything above, 48. That's okay. So, and again, you feel free to tweak this because your text box, might be different from mine. So I'm just doing this based on my size being 64, and adding 44 works for me. So we're going to left align this and make sure this is at the bottom. And the origin for this one, we want this to be top center, which is 50, 0. The constraint is going to be left, and this is going to be at the bottom. And the next thing is we're going to go to the text option, make sure this is multi-line. Remember, this is going to be the multi-line. You want to have to check the auto height. And for the max height here, I'm going to give this something around 350. So this basically say, once he hits the max height, which is 350, stop the box from growing, right? We don't want the box to like just grow continuously, right? We want to have a max height for it. So I picked 350 because that kind of like works for the text box. So you feel free maybe to have something more than the value I have here. Cool. So I'm just going to proceed down. Now just get the same styling that we have for input 1 to match what we're doing here too for input 2. So the sizing 16 colors, I'm going to change this to white. And then the placeholder text, this one doesn't really matter what we give it, but I'm just going to give it the same thing just in case, So that gets that. For the padding here, I'm going to give these 24. We can always tweak this later, right? I'm just going to give this a 24, maybe. Just going to give this top maybe like a 16. So this basically controls what the padding would be when the box like fully grows, right? So we don't want to have no padding. So unless things start to feel too tight, we want to give this a bit of padding. So I think on the left and right side 24 works, and on the top maybe like a 16. This is just values I'm just trying out from my head and based on like Figma designs that I've done in the past. And then for the bottom one, maybe we can just give this like I don't know, like a 60. So this would be, I'm adding 60 and not 16 because remember when this grows we have, so if I like a ton of these, remember we have like 2 buttons here, one for the attach and one for the send, and we want to make sure like that text isn't like hitting these at all. So I'm just setting a max of a bottom padding of 60 just to account for like that spacing that's going to happen there. Though I mean it's always gonna change. I'm just putting 60 for now. What else? If I'm just going to turn this back on and make sure we're getting rid of the fill. And last thing is we want to hide this completely, so the opacity will be set at 0 because by default it's the input 1 we want to trigger first. Cool. So if we preview this, nothing works. I mean, there's nothing going on. So let's get this working. The first thing is I'm going to add in a trigger. So it's going to be a mouse over. So we want to mouse over the text box. And when we mouse over the text box, the response we want to have is the scale. So we want it to go, oops, if I click this, we want the scale to go from, remember, it's 350 and the expanded state, we want it to be at 424. And I'm just going to tweak the easing here. I do have some custom like easing I use, so feel free to pause this video and copy mine. So I'm just going to select one of these. And for the duration here, I'm just going to do a 0.3. I'm going to add another scale response. And this one is going to be for input 2. Currently, we have it set to be 262, but when the box grows, we also want this input field to grow a little bit, because right now it's just going to stick to 262 and we do not want the text to be cut off. So here I'm just going to throw in something random, just adding in like 100 more pixel on top of like what we have. So maybe just something around 354 kind of like works. You can always test it based on yours. So that's that one. One more thing I'm going to do here is to make sure it's using the same easing curves I'm using for that one. And also I'm just going to add it to be 0.3. So if we preview this, and you can see this is working, and we got this to work. Cool. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is we would create our variables. Now, so to actually get the text box and the input 2 to actually work, we need to use variables to make it more dynamic. So this is what it's for, basically. So I'm going to head over to variables. You want to click the plus icon and you're going to choose for this scene. So here on the right, we're going to hit use formula. Click on this box. Make sure you're clicking on the FX symbol and click on the add. Oh, before we do that, we want to add in length. And you're going to see these and you want to click on the plus and I'll be choosing for input 1 dot text. I'm going to hit that and I will hit OK. So basically what this is doing is if I toggle on the ladybug here, if you hover around like this variable 1, you're going to see like this ladybug icon. So if I toggle it and hit preview, what this is doing, if I start spamming, let's say like G, you can see how it's like counting all of the character like I have. It's basically taking the character length that I have in input 1. And this is helpful so that we can tell, when input 2 like a box should come in and when we don't want it to come in. So that's what the variable that we assign this is doing, basically. So if I close this and I'm going to now add the trigger. So I'm going to add a trigger. We're going to add a detect trigger. We're going to be detecting variable 1, which is what we just created. Here I'm going to first add in the response. The first response would be opacity. So I'm going to be adding in, remember the send button that I set to be 50. Now we want this to be at 100 because it's active. And the duration here, I'm just going to set it as the 0 because I want this to be instant. And I don't want things to feel like weird, right? So I'm going to add in the condition now for this one. So the condition here, we're going to be setting variable 1, and here it will be greater than. The value here I'm going to be setting will be 28. The reason I got 28, if I go back to the preview and I start just typing G. So basically what I'm saying is when it gets to 28, right? When the length gets to 28, this is when I want the box to start growing. So this is when I want input 2, which is the other box, to come in. So the thing is yours can be longer than mine. So maybe you might want yours up until when you get to the end of the line, you want your box to come in. But like I've tested this and 28 here, like just this length here feels right for me. So I'm going to use that one. So 28 is the value I'm using here. And then the response here, we're going to first add in the opacity. For input 1, we want this to go away and just make sure this is going to be at the 0. Another one, I'm just going to hit Command D to duplicate this. Opacity for input 2. Now we want to show this one. Other thing I'm going to add in here is going to be scale. Here I want to scale like the text box. I want to just grow these to match what we actually have here. Remember, we have these set to 108. So I'm just going to scale these to be 108. And also make sure this is at a 0. The other trigger, I mean, the other response I'm going to add in here is going to be the radius. And we're going to reduce this to 24 because we don't want this to feel too rounded as it grows. And here, the duration, I'm just going to give these 0. One more response I'm going to add in here is going to be for the text. And I'm going to add in for input 2. So basically what I'm saying is, if I go to formula, I want whatever text that was in the first input, which is input 1, to get transferred to input 2. So that's what these response is doing. So if we click the FX symbol, I'm just going to click the plus sign, go to input 1 and hit dot text. And just hit OK. And that's good. And the last one I forgot to add is the focus. So because we want, input 2 to just focus automatically. Now, if I test these, we start typing, you're going to see that works now. But it's not, if I erase, if you see if I'm erasing the character, it's not going back. So it's not going back to the default state, which is the collapse state. Now we're going to fix that. I'm going to add in our second variable. So I'm just going to duplicate these. So this one is going to be for input 2. And what we'll be doing is just the reverse of what we did in input 1. So for this one, I would go here and just delete this one. Make sure I'm only deleting this and add in input 2. Oops, I think that's wrong. You know what? Let's just do this from scratch. So length dot input 2 dot text. And you hit OK. The same thing here. I'm just going to duplicate this one so it's faster. So we're detecting variable 2. And here the opacity, I really don't need these. So we're going to delete this one. The condition here, it's going to be the reverse. So instead of greater than, we want to do less than. And here, we want it to be from 29, just because, just make sure in case if yours, you added, for this one, you added like 32 or 33. For the input here, just make sure you're adding like one extra like number before the actual one you added, just so you don't get any weirdness. Because what this is basically saying is when I start erasing the text and it hits 29, I want to revert back to my default state, which is input 1. So I'm not adding it to be at 28 because this 28 is already working for input 1. So for this one, I'm just going to add 20. It's basically just saying I'm adding 28 plus 1. So just make sure you're adding like one extra number to the second input. So that's good. Under here, I'm just going to do the reverse. So for input 1, we're going to show this. And for input 2, we're hiding this. For the scale, we're taking this back to 64 because that is the default size. For this one, we're taking it back to 48. And for the text, we're doing the reverse now. So we're saying input 1, we want whatever text that was on input 2 to get transferred to input 1. So I'm just going to delete these and hit add. You know what? I'm just going to input 2 dot text and hit OK. And for the focus, I'm going to go here and we want to focus input 1 back. So let's test it and see. If I hover and I just hit G, you can see our box is growing. Like if I, oops, why is that not working? Hold on. Let's do this one more time and try to erase this. It's not going back. I think something is wrong. Let's see. Just making sure. Oops, I found what the problem. So in the condition here, my bad. For the condition, just make sure that it's not variable one, it's two that we want to trigger. So if I preview this again, I hit G and I erase this, you can see it's going back to the state. So we have this one working, but if you notice, like the box isn't growing. So we're going to work on that now. So the last thing is we would add in another variable for this scene. So now we're not going to be using any formula. You just leave it as is. I'm going to add in another detect trigger. So detect. So now we want to detect input 2 and we'll be detecting its height. And I want to assign this variable to this. And the formula for here is going to be input 2 dot height. And you hit OK. And the other thing we want to do here is to give in a scale response for the text box. And we want to only target its height. And so we're going to hit the FX symbol again and make sure we're calling input 2 dot height. So this lets the box grow basically. And just make sure the easing here is set to linear. So here we want it to be at a 0. And the last response here I'm going to add in is the radius. The radius here, we want this to be 24 at all times when it grows. So here I'm just going to give it the same thing, linear, and this would be 0. So let's preview. Let me restart this. So if I preview, we got the box expanding. So if I hit G, oh, you can see this is growing. Ooh. And it looks nice. So everything seems to be working. If I erase the text, it's all working. Cool. So you can use this for your AI project or any other project that requires, a text box and you want to text interactivity before shipping. This is a great way to do it in Protopie. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Leave comments if you have any questions. Make sure you subscribe and hit the thumbs up if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.